President Vladimir Putin is furious. In a single operation, Russia lost a fleet of bombers it depended on for both terror and deterrence. Long-range aircraft, once central to Moscow's war strategy, were obliterated on Russian soil. The strike didn't come from missiles launched across the border, it came from deep inside Russia itself. And what Ukraine used to pull it off? Let's just say you won't believe what was packed into those trucks. Now Putin's prized bombers are in ruins, and his ability to threaten Ukraine from the skies may never recover. Let's break it down. Details are still emerging about what Ukraine is dubbing Operation Spiderweb, so we'll start with the basics. According to the Warzone, or TWZ, June 1st saw Ukraine carry out an enormous drone strike at several bases across Russia that is believed to have destroyed dozens of aircraft. Unconfirmed rumors also suggest that Ukraine targeted the headquarters of Russia's Northern Fleet, which is home to nuclear-capable submarines. Ukraine's target was clear: any strategic asset Russia maintains that is capable of launching bombs, missiles, and even nuclear weapons. The 4 Russian air bases Ukraine targeted are Belaya, Olenya, Ivanovo, and Dyaghilevo, according to the Kyiv Post. And it gets worse for Russia. The same resource says that Ukraine's massive drone strike has managed to destroy 34% of Putin's bomber fleet, causing a staggering $7 billion of damage in the process. Speaking in the wake of the attack, Ukraine's Armed Forces General Staff took to Telegram to state, "The Security Service of Ukraine is conducting a large-scale special operation to destroy bomber aircraft in the rear of the Russian Federation. SBU drones have hit more than 40 aircraft, including A-50, Tu-96, and Tu-22M3. The General Staff also claimed a figure of $2 billion of damage caused, though we now know that the scale of the attacks was much larger than these initial indications. Don't underestimate the sheer scale or impressiveness of these attacks. Footage shared by multiple sources and reported on by TWZ showcases just how effective they were. In Belaya, which is over 2,700 miles from Kyiv, videos showed multiple Russian bombers in flames, with some being caught in the act of being struck by Ukraine's drones. That distance from Ukraine to Russia alone should be causing you to ask a key question: how on earth did Ukraine pull this off? We know that Ukraine is focused on building long-range drones capable of striking deep into the heart of Russia for at least the last year. According to Forbes, Ukraine plans to build 30,000 long-range drones for this purpose in 2025 alone. However, even the most impressive of those drones would struggle to travel thousands of miles deep into Russia without being detected by Putin's aerial defenses. Ukraine needed another plan, and what they came up with was absolutely genius. Rather than using long-range drones, which would be vulnerable throughout their entire journey, Ukraine instead used hordes of its shorter-range first-person view, or FPV drones. Typically, those drones wouldn't be capable of coming anywhere close to the targets Ukraine just hit. But therein lies the genius of Ukraine's plan. According to the BBC, Ukraine managed to smuggle these short-range drones into Russia, potentially over the course of several months. Ukraine sent several trucks into Russia, many of which carried mobile wooden cabins with drones hidden inside. Once those trucks were in position, those cabins were opened remotely, allowing the drones to take off and zero in on their targets. More details came from TWZ and the Preston Stewart YouTube channel. Stewart, who is a former US Army field artillery officer who studied international relations and terrorism at West Point, says that Ukraine's operation was one of the most complex it's pulled off from a logistical standpoint. He confirms the BBC's report that Ukraine transported short-range FPV drones into Russia using trucks and wooden containers. He also emphasized that those who conducted these attacks were SBU members who had been stationed in Ukraine for a long time, meaning they'd already done what they needed to do in Russia and were back home long before the June 1st attack occurred. As Stewart puts it, if the Putin regime detains someone, it'll be another staged event for the domestic audience. Translation: Ukraine just hit Putin hard, without any of its operatives even having to be in Russia at all. TWZ also shared footage pulled from multiple X accounts that confirmed the BBC and Stewart's stories. One short video shows groups of what appear to be Russian civilians swarming over one of the trucks Ukraine sent into their territory. They seem to be attempting to prevent the drones from launching out of those trucks, though they have practically no success. Another video, shared by the DefMon X account, shows a drone taking off from the back of a truck, while a Russian viewer commentates over the top of the footage. What sounds like gunfire rings in the background, which is likely a vain Russian attempt to take the drone out. Toward the end of the footage, another drone is seen emerging from the truck. One thing is clear: this wasn't a random Ukrainian strike on Russia's territory. Operation Spiderweb was very carefully planned. It would have taken months of planning just to get the trucks into Russia in the first place, never mind having them travel thousands of miles to the air bases that Ukraine wanted to hit. That isn't speculation. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that this operation has been in the works for over a year. In a post published to X, Zelensky said, We are doing everything to protect our independence, our state, people. Zelensky also outlined Ukraine's conditions for peace with Russia in his post, which we'll get to in a little while. Also on X, and reported by TWZ, Zelensky said that the attacks had been planned for a very long time. Head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, delivered a report regarding today's operation, Zelensky said. An absolutely brilliant result. A result achieved solely by Ukraine. 1 year, 6 months and 9 days from the start of planning to effective execution. Our most long-range operation. Our people involved in preparing the operation were withdrawn from Russian territory in time. Zelensky went on to write that he couldn't and wouldn't reveal everything that went into the preparation of this mission right now, likely to avoid giving anything away that might alert Russia if Ukraine plans a similar attack in the future. But he doesn't need to say anything more. The results speak for themselves. Dozens of Russian bombers are now in flames. There's something within that Zelensky quote that might give you pause for thought. Ukraine's leader specifically says this is an attack that Ukraine carried out alone, which leads us to a question. What, if anything, did the US know about what Ukraine just pulled off? There are conflicting reports about the answer. According to TWZ, Axios initially reported that Ukraine informed the United States about its planned drone attack ahead of time. However, that report was soon pulled, with Axios later changing its tune to state that the US had no idea that the attack was about to be carried out. Whether this is the truth or if Ukraine received word from the US to keep it out of the whole thing remains to be seen. President Donald Trump wanting to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine, it would make sense for him to sever any connection the US might have had to Ukraine's spectacular drone strike. In its report on Operation Spiderweb, CNN confirms that the Trump administration didn't know Ukraine's attack was coming. That's according to an anonymous administration official CNN spoke to, with a different senior defense official adding that the attack showcased a level of sophistication on Ukraine's part that hasn't been seen up until this point in the war. CNN also says that US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth received regular reports about Ukraine's attacks as they happened, while he traveled to Joint Base Andrews on June 1st. However, Hegseth apparently has yet to speak to his Ukrainian counterparts to get more details about the strikes. It's also worth digging deeper into the outcome of the strikes and what makes them so impressive. CNN provides more details about the sheer distance of the targets from Ukraine. Beyond the Belaya base we mentioned earlier, which is over 2,700 miles from Kyiv, Ukraine also hit Diaghilevo. That's much closer, at just 320 miles from Ukraine. However, it's a key target, says CNN, because it's a training center for Russia's strategic bomber force. That means Ukraine likely took out several Russian bombers that trainee pilots used to learn how to launch Putin's devastating missile and bomb attacks on Ukraine. The Ivanovo base is about 500 miles from Ukraine, says CNN, and it's where Russia stores many of its military transport aircraft. As for the Olenaya base, that's close to the Arctic Circle and is over 1,200 miles away from Ukraine. Russia's response to the attacks showcases how effective they were. According to CNN, Russia first attempted to downplay what Ukraine achieved. As is so often the case, the country's Ministry of Defense confirmed that Ukraine had targeted multiple airfields, though it preferred to focus on the success Russia achieved in taking out Ukraine's drones. It claimed Russia repelled drone strikes in multiple regions, including Ivanovo, but that several pieces of aircraft caught fire. Those fires had apparently been extinguished by the time the ministry released its initial statement. Maybe they were, after the aircraft were already rendered inoperable by Ukraine's drones. Later, Russia attempted to characterize Ukraine's massive drone strike as a terrorist attack. TWZ carried the full statement, which read, "Today the Kyiv regime carried out a terrorist attack using FPV drones against airfields in the Murmansk, Irkutsk, Ivanovo, Ryazan, and Amur regions. At military airfields in Ivanovo, Ryazan, and Amur regions, all terrorist attacks were repelled. In the Murmansk and Irkutsk regions, as a result of the launch of FPV drones from the territory located in the immediate vicinity of the airfields, several units of aircraft caught fire." Despite labeling the attacks as terroristic, Russia also claimed that there were no casualties among civilian or military personnel. And as Preston Stewart predicted, Russia is also claiming that some of the participants of the terrorist attacks have been detained. That doesn't mesh with Ukraine's claims that it managed to get all of its operators out of Russia before the attack was even launched. Somebody is lying. The odds are that it's the country that's trying to save face after Ukraine caught it with its collective pants down. Russian military blogger Sergei Kolyasnikov also provided details about just how clever Ukraine's strategy was. He revealed that the containers used to store Ukraine's FPV drones were assembled in Russia itself. "We found a warehouse where containers with drones were collected. Chelyabinsk, Sverdlovsk, Tract 28A, Kolyasnikov reported. It was rented for 350,000 rubles, about $4,500. That's why the truck in the Amur region had Chelyabinsk license plates. They were leaving from there. The Russian Ryber Telegram channel also reported on the strikes, confirming that Russian citizens had attempted to stop the drones from leaving Ukraine's trucks. A video has gone viral on the internet showing how caring drivers in a parking lot in the Irkutsk region climbed onto a truck from which drones were taking off and tried to destroy them with stones and improvised means. People risk their lives. The drone's warhead is not the smallest, and what would happen if it detonated is a rhetorical question, but the men still tried to save others. Even though they were ordinary civilians, their efforts didn't work. Ukraine's drones still took off and decimated some of Russia's most valuable assets. What we see here is an extremely complex military operation that took over a year of planning. Somehow, Ukraine was able to stash trucks, shelters, and drones in Russia, all under Putin's nose, without Russia being aware, for over a year. When the time was right, Ukraine pulled the trigger on a massive attack that saw it use short-range drones that should never have reached Russia in the first place to cause over $7 billion worth of damage. Here's why that matters. The timing is everything. Ukraine's June 1st attack comes on the eve of peace negotiations it's set to hold with Russia and Turkey. According to Australia's ABC News, Ukraine has already set out its demands for those negotiations. Ukraine is calling for a 30-day ceasefire as it has in the past, along with an exchange of prisoners of war on both sides. It also says that it won't accept any restrictions on its military strength, either during the ceasefire or after a peace deal is struck, and is calling for no recognition of Russian claims of sovereignty over the Ukrainian territory that Putin's forces have occupied. Finally, reparations for the damage Russia caused to Ukraine will also be requested. Documents that have been shown to Reuters also state that all negotiations about territory will use the current front line of the Ukraine war as a starting point. Right now, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine, which is about the same amount of territory as the state of Ohio, Reuters says. Peace discussions are going to happen on June 2nd. Why would Ukraine choose the day before to launch its massive drone strike? There are two reasons. First, Ukraine is sending a message to Russia. With this brilliant attack, it's just proven to Putin that it can send operatives into his territory at any time, with those operatives working for months without Russia being able to detect their presence. It's also shown Russia Ukraine has more than one way to bring the war back home to Putin. For so long, the focus had been on long-range missiles and drones, launched from Ukraine. Now, Russia has to worry about Ukraine using its short-range weapons to hit Russian assets. The obvious question will be on Putin's mind as his delegates head into the June 2nd peace negotiations. If Ukraine could pull this off once, what would stop it from launching a similar operation? Worse yet, for all Putin knows, there may be another Operation Spiderweb underway that could launch if negotiations don't go the way that Ukraine wants them to go. The second reason is one that so often seems to fuel Ukraine's biggest strikes: revenge. According to CNN, Ukraine struck a day after Russia launched its largest ever drone attack on Ukraine's soil. May 31st saw a staggering 472 Russian drones heading into Ukraine. Russia also launched a missile strike against a Ukrainian training site, killing 12 people and wounding 60 more. By contrast, Ukraine's attack required just 117 drones and caused far more material damage to Russia. Here we see the contrast in the two countries' approaches. As Russia itself confirmed, Ukraine's drone assault didn't kill any people. It just took out aircraft, a lot of them. Putin's forces, on the other hand, targeted people with their missiles and drones. It may be coincidental that Operation Spiderweb was carried out the day after Russia's largest drone strike on Ukraine, but the timing matches up too perfectly. If nothing else, Ukraine now has a ton of leverage to take into the peace talks. Russia has to listen, or Ukraine could take out billions of dollars more of its equipment in future attacks. Speaking of what Ukraine took out, we also can't ignore that Ukraine has specifically targeted Russian bombers that are capable of launching nuclear weapons. As TWZ notes, Ukraine just upped the ante. While the bombers Ukraine took out are key to Putin's plan of raining destruction down on Ukraine from afar, which already makes them legitimate targets, TWZ says those same aircraft also underpin a leg of Russia's nuclear deterrent. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists backs this up, stating that Russia stores around 200 nuclear warheads at its heavy bomber bases. Of course, Ukraine hasn't targeted those warheads specifically. However, by taking out so many Russian bombers, it's effectively rendered a large portion of these 200 nukes useless, at least until Russia can replace its destroyed bombers. And given Russia's November alterations to its nuclear doctrine, which the Arms Control Association points out saw Russia loosen its restrictions on how and when it can deploy nuclear weapons, any attack that limits Russia's nuclear deterrent plays in Ukraine's favor. Again, it's about leverage. Ukraine has shown Russia that it can launch complex attacks on Putin's territory to gain its own leverage, with those attacks also removing some of the leverage Russia has over Ukraine. Another reason why this attack matters is that it's exposed Russia. Specifically, Ukraine has exposed that Russia doesn't protect its most valuable aircraft well enough. That's according to Preston Stewart, who says, "This is without exaggeration a very serious blow to the strategic component caused by both serious miscalculations in the work of the special services and a careless attitude toward aviation management which, even after all of the attacks, stood in the open fields without shelters." Russia already knows about its hardened shelter problem. Back in July 2024, Defense Express reported that Russia had announced plans for building more defensive structures to guard its aircraft in the wake of another successful strike on an airbase. Clearly not a lot has happened in the year following that announcement of those plans. None of the aircraft Ukraine struck were protected by hardened shelters, which would have created clear barriers that Ukraine's FPV drones likely wouldn't have been able to penetrate. The aircraft were out in the open. Now they're in flames. Just another aspect of Russia's strategic incompetence that Ukraine has managed to expose. Finally, TWZ highlights another aspect of Ukraine's attack that can't be ignored. It demonstrates that Ukraine is winning the battle to bring artificial intelligence or AI to the field. TWZ says that Ukraine is already deploying AI-enabled drones that are capable of flying over large distances without radio control, rendering them immune from jamming in the process. Those drones can recognize targets autonomously and even attack without direct instructions from their operators. It's unclear precisely what control methods Ukraine used for its FPV drones during Operation Spiderweb. FPV drones can be controlled in several ways, including using AI, pre-programming with GPS coordinates, and most commonly, having a human operate the drone. However, the latter doesn't seem to have been an option for Ukraine. If its claims to have removed all of its operatives from Russia before the attack happened are true, that means human operatives wouldn't have been in range to control the FPV drones. That leaves GPS pre-programming and AI as the only other options. Both are terrifying for Russia. Putin has just suffered through what stands as one of the most significant strikes Ukraine has carried out on Russia's soil. In less than 24 hours, he's lost a third of his aircraft and $7 billion at a time when he can ill afford to be wasting more money. Ukraine has gained leverage while destroying some of Russia's nuclear deterrent. Now Putin faces heading into the peace negotiations with his tail between his legs, as he knows that Ukraine is only growing stronger, despite his attritional war having dragged on for more than 3 years. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to The Military Show for more up-to-date commentary on the latest developments in the Ukraine war. Also, check out this video covering the AI-powered drone mothership that Ukraine will soon be deploying into Russia to carry out even more strikes like the one we saw on June 1st. Now go and check out Ukraine cripples Russia's drone empire with unthinkable 1,200-kilometer strike, or click this other video instead.